Cool. Staying Strong as We Age, by me. I'm Nicholas Marki. And let's get to it. I got about 100 slides. Just kidding. I have about 11 slides. Any questions you have at any point, just shout them out and try to answer them as we go. And then we'll have a little bit of question answer at the end too. So these are kind of the main things I'd like to go over today. What is resistance training? Why you should train, practical applications of training, their benefits and considerations, and how to start. Who am I? I am a husband and father of 3 humans and 1 dog. I have been a physical therapist since 2013, primarily specializing in sports and orthopedics. Orthopedics is just fancy words for saying like treating people with back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, any sort of surgeries of those areas, whatnot. Strength and conditioning, that kind of goes hand in hand with, I believe, both of those things, sports and orthopedics, as well as what's called vestibular balance rehab, and that's dealing with dizziness and vertigo, and also sometimes post-concussion syndrome. I'm also a former gym owner. We closed temporarily due to COVID, and then closed permanently. And now I've just transitioned to more online coaching for diet and training. Currently practice my physical therapy out of a local gym here in Wilmington called TF Fitness and Nutrition. That's about me. What about you? Okay, so what is resistance training? Basically, so resistance training is essentially lifting weights and or body weight to some degree. Essentially what's happening is you're putting what we call a stimulus, so the weight and how many times you lift it up and down, into your body. This causes kind of a disruption in your body, in the nerves, the brain, and the muscles, the bone, a very slight disruption. Your body senses this, and then over the next several days, your body builds up a little bit to try to match that stimulus, okay? So it's the part of the adaptability of our body. Gradually and slowly over time, this increases what your body can handle. One of those things would be called progressive overload. So that would be over an extended period of time. I am doing more than before, like a month ago or 2 months ago or a year ago. And also what we call specificity. Specificity just relates to you get better at the things you practice. That makes sense, right? So if I do what's called a bicep curl, where I lift my arm up and down, I don't know if anyone can see me doing this on my beach background, but I'm going to get better at doing this movement with more weight, more reps, yada, yada, yada. So essentially just think about it. Your body is here. You apply a stimulus that's slightly above what it can handle. Over next several days, your body tries to reach up to that point. And then the next time you apply a stimulus that's slightly more, and then so on and so forth. And then over time, it's not quite just like that linearly. It's more of kind of like an up and down, but trending up. Your body can gradually handle more and more and more. Probably with obviously a ceiling at some point. Cool? Mm-hmm. So, very important concept to this. I like this saying by a coach named Lane Norton. Compliance is the science. Basically, what you sticking to a program and consistency is the #1 thing. So you can come up with the most badass strength training program, but if the person doesn't do it on any sort of regularity or consistently, it doesn't really matter. Same thing applies to diet, or really probably any skill that you want to improve. So where I take it is, I mean, obviously my company's called Beach Barbell. So barbell is a weight lifting implement. So that's kind of where I tend to bias, but there are many different ways people can go about doing resistance training. So there's free weights like dumbbells and barbells. There's cables, machines, body weight. Honestly, I kind of tend to just recommend people do what they enjoy. So if there's a bunch of cool machines they really enjoy, and the person feels they can apply a good effort to it, and they also feel that they can stick with that over weeks and months and years, then that's where I would say go do that. That is number one, compared to like, oh, you have to do free weights because of X, Y, Z or whatever. Because honestly, if you enjoy what you're doing, it's more likely that one, you're going to stick with it, and two, you're probably actually going to apply good effort when you go and do it because you actually enjoy it. So another thing I think is important, it kind of goes along with sticking with it, adherence and compliance, is tracking and what we call process goals. So by tracking, I just mean like, okay, I did this exercise, I did it for 50 pounds and I did 3 sets of 10 on this date or whatever. That way, so the next time you're more likely to actually maybe try to progress a little bit because you've actually written it down. It kind of gives you a little bit of like I think a motivational nudge, because you're going to look at your weight and your sets and your reps, and we'll go into those a little bit more later, and actually try to beat them by a little bit. And then what we call process goals. Process goals are more focusing on like compliance. So process goal might be like, my goal for this week is to show up at the gym 3 times. So instead of like, oh, I need to lift X amount of weight for blah, 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 my goal is I just show up, okay? I tend to recommend people focus more on those for training and diet, because there's a lot of part of the outcome that you may not have control over, right? There's a lot in this world that we don't have control over. And if you just focus on what you have control over, the process, like I'm going to go in, I'm going to do these things, and then I'm going to leave. One, you're probably going to be less stressed about it. And two, you're going to focus on the consistency part, which again is the number one component to actually getting the benefit of the resistance training. Make sense? All right. I don't know if there's a chat or anything. Is there a Q&A?
Smoothie.
I was just seeing if this actually had, I've never seen this before.
Right now, he's talking.
Right. Anyways, oopsie. Where did I? Yeah, why you should train. What happened to my screen?
Please.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Why you should train. Kind of the number one and probably most obvious is to improve what we call your lean body mass. So that would be like your bones and your muscles. And the interesting thing is that, you know, we have research that shows that people with higher lean body mass are less likely to die of all things comparatively to in each decade. So we call that as all-cause mortality. Basically, you have higher lean body mass each decade, you're less likely to die of just about everything. So there's lots of different reasons and components and variables with that, but it should give us a little bit of a nudge towards why we should train. It can improve your performance. So I look at this as just, it's making your life easier, right? So I kind of have a rule of thumb with people is that they should be able to pick up at least double what they normally have to pick up throughout their day-to-day life, so that if I go and pick up that thing in my day-to-day life and I know I can lift at least double that, that thing is going to be that much easier, whenever I use it. With that, I think also coupled with is it reduces your risk of injury. So if say that I have to lift up frequently 50 pounds in my day-to-day life, and my max lifting weight up is 55 pounds, then I'm kind of like doing a max effort every time I do this thing in my day-to-day life. I'm running a higher risk of injury. Whereas if I can at least lift 100 pounds fairly well, and then I have to go lift 50 pounds in my day-to-day life, well, that's now 50% of my max. It's going to be less likely that that is probably going to cause me an injury. Okay. Aesthetics. So that may not be important for everybody, but kind of you get these functional things like you have reduced risk of death and injury, improving performance, but it also tends to make you look leaner. You know, that's oftentimes a look people want. What we call increased physiological reserve. So that's just fancy for saying you're just a more robust animal. So if you get sick and you're starting up from a high point and it knocks you down, you know, then you're going to have an easier chance of recuperating and just dealing with whatever it is you're dealing with, versus if you start way down here and then you get sick and it knocks you down, well, you're getting pushed down pretty low, and it's probably also going to be a harder climb to climb out of that. And also, training can limit and potentially prevent the aging effect of decreased muscle mass. So unfortunately, as we age, we do tend to lose muscle, primarily fast twitch, the faster muscles, so we get a little slower. So if we can try to limit or prevent, you know, again, potentially prevent that, you're going to, again, your life is going to be easier as you age. Any questions on that? Awesome. Okay. There we go. All right, it's the right one. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Practical applications. So I tend to just break it up into kind of 3 main categories with 6 total subcategories, and that sounds more complicated than it really is, but basically you have movements where you push things away from you, you have movements where you pull things towards you, and then you have 2 different kind of leg movements. So breaking those up, I can push things out, you know, horizontally from me, so that would be like a push-up or a bench press, or, you know, like a machine chest press. I have vertical movements where I'm pushing away from me, so that's where like I'm lifting the weight over my head, like what's called an overhead press, or a handstand push-up, or kind of a modified handstand push-up, which is called a pike push-up, where you're bending down. Okay, hi buddy. Can you guys go back inside? Sorry about that. And then you have things called where you're pulling towards you. Okay, you can play out here. Where you're pulling things towards you. So horizontally, these would be called rows or inverted rows, where it's kind of like a pull-up, but you're more flat and you're pulling yourself up to like a bar or something. A vertical iPhone center. Okay. Vertical pulling would be like pull-ups or those machines where you pull them down. Okay. And then legs, you kind of have 2 patterns. Primarily, you have what's called like a squat pattern. That's where you're bending your knees more. So squats, lunges, or like the leg press machine. Hinging pattern is more where you're not bending your knees as much, but you're moving more your butt back. So we call that hinging at the hips. So that would be what we call like a deadlift, or what's called an RDL, or good morning. So less knee bend, but more movement of the hips. Oh. So typically what is recommended is something like 6 to 10 plus sets of each of those major area per week. So what that might look like, sorry about that. What that might look like would be like, if I'm say that I decide to do it 2 to 3 times a week, I'm going to do something like 3 to 5 sets of the push, 3 to 5 sets of the pull, 3 to 5 sets of the legs each session. And then I can just kind of alternate the horizontal and vertical pushing and pulling, and the squat and hinge pattern for the legs. You could also decide to do a little bit of horizontal and vertical pushing and pulling each time, and a little bit of squatting and hinging motions each time with the legs. So there's a lot of variation that you could play with there. And again, remember, this could be, you know, barbells, dumbbells, cables, machines, and some body weight. Some of these movements are harder to do with body weight, right? Like not everyone can do a pull-up. So that's where something like a pull down, you know, either cable or machine, or you can get one of those stretch bands and, you know, hook it up to the top of the door and then pull that down. And then again, from just the practical perspective, when you're choosing which exercise, you don't want exercise that increases pain generally. I kind of have like a green, yellow, and red light type of philosophy. So like a green light would be like totally feels fine, no pain. Yellow light would be like it kind of feels a little bit of pain, but it's tolerable to you, and you feel like you have you know, good range of motion and control with it. So then that's an okay exercise to do. And then red light would be like, you know, I don't have good control, and or it causes, just feels too much pain. So
blueberry bushes online or on the phone and pay for it. You stick them up. Can I do that?
Sorry, are you asking a question? Is that Valerie? Did someone ask a question? Hello?
That would be Kurt.
What did you say?
My name is Valerie Baxter.
Hi, Valerie Baxter. Did you have a question?
Area code 301.
I didn't catch that. Okay. So you would also want to choose things that, oh, let's see. Chat. She's not muted. She's on her phone. Okay. You'd want to choose exercises that you enjoy and you would actually continue. So again, going to the consistency argument. And also preferably that you can perform in full or near full range of motion under control. So that is, I prefer people to do, like if they're going to do, say like a pull down, I want their arms to come all the way up and come all the way down. Sometimes as we age, we might lose some range of motion. So like sometimes with what we call the overhead press, where you lift the weight over your head, they may not, you know, maybe they only get, you know, 60 to 75% of the way or something. And, you know, sometimes you're just gonna have to take it for what it is. But again, ideally striving for full range of motion if possible. All right. So this is a concept that seems complicated at first to understand, but once you kind of apply it, it makes a lot more sense. So ideally, you're going to perform the sets to about what we call 2 to 4 reps until failure, or what we might call 2 to 4 RAR, or reps in reserve. What this would mean would be like, say that I do 10 reps, then I stop there, say that that's my goal, is to get to 10 reps with this exercise and weight. But I feel like I could have done maybe 13 reps. This would be a 3 reps in reserve, 3 RAR. That range is kind of where we see a good trade-off between challenging the muscles, not over fatiguing them, because like a 0 RAR would be like, I did 10 reps and that was my last one. I couldn't do an 11th rep. We don't need to go to that point really ever. You know, it could be useful sometimes, but for most people, you don't actually ever need to get that point. If you kind of hang around in this 2 to 4 reps until failure, you'll be getting good amount of challenge and stimulus like we talked about, but at the same time trying to reduce how much fatigue you get from the effort. How I use this just in day-to-day practice is like, say that I'm doing an exercise, say that I'm doing a squat with somebody, you know, let's say if they do 40 pounds 6 times, I ask them how many more do they think they could have done. They say maybe I could have done 10 total, you know, 4 more reps. Okay, so 4 IR with that set. I say, okay, you know, depending on what we're shooting for, maybe we're going to go for another set. Then I would potentially do maybe a little bit more weight. Might say, okay, let's try 45 pounds and go to that, you know, six reps and see what the reps in reserve is. Or you can kind of stick with the weight, because as you do the exercise and then following sets, you're going to get tired. So you're not going to be probably able to do as much. Again, it seems complicated at first, but it's kind of a nice thing to track, because you're going to have good days and bad days, right? So say that I'm doing the squat with this 40-pound weight. One day, 10 reps at that might feel like this 3 RAR. And then on another day, maybe we're not feeling as great. Maybe that 10 reps with that 40 pounds feels like a 0 RAR. So I'd actually want to maybe back down the weight a little bit, so that I'm kind of respecting this range, so I'm not over fatiguing myself. Because you don't need to grind yourself to dust when you go into the gym. In fact, you probably don't want to, because that might ruin your consistency. And you also got a life to live outside of this. So ideally, if you can kind of float around in this range, you're getting, I think, the best risk reward benefit from the training. Does that make sense? And then again, track your exercises, sets, reps, weights, all that, either in an app or paper. You can download our app and use it for free at beachbarbell.com/exercise-app. Basically, just want to keep an eye on what you're actually doing, so that, I do this exercise this week and then I do it the next week. I kind of know, a general idea of what I can do and maybe where I can go to try to progress. So if I did 3 sets of 10 of this 40-pound squat, and this week, and then maybe the next week, I'm like, what, maybe I'll try 45 pounds at 3 sets of 10, or maybe I'll try 40 pounds at 3 sets of 12. So I increased some reps, kept the weight the same, or kept the reps the same and increased the weight a little bit. So lots of different ways you can play with it. And then another thing I like to have people do is put their workout sessions in a calendar, like block the time just like you would do for a doctor appointment, right? So you put that in your calendar, it pops up and reminds you on your phone. You might be more likely to actually do it, because now the time is blocked, right? And treat it just like it's a very important appointment, because it is. And this might also help with consistency as well. Okay. Other benefits and considerations. So these are more considerations. So kind of the 4 main pillars of lifestyle, you could say, the things that you have some control over potentially, would be your exercise and training, nutrition, sleep, stress. Okay. So we've been talking mostly about training today, but there's also nutrition. So to supplement your training, eating a little bit more protein is usually advisable. So that's somewhere between 0.7 to 1.1 grams per pound body weight. So if we translate that to, let's say, a 200-pound person, I think that's roughly like 140 grams of protein to 220 grams of protein a day. That's because the protein helps stimulate muscle growth, and especially when you're combining that with resistance training, you're going to get more of an optimal outcome with that. For some people, protein may also be what's called more satiating, which means that it may make you a little bit less hungry. So you combine, from a diet perspective, if you're trying to manage your weight, eating some more protein and vegetables and whatnot, it's going to help you get a little bit more full. Maybe helps you curb cravings and hunger so that you don't overeat, and then you can manage your weight a little bit easier. And then eat calories to support a healthy body mass. So for some people, that might be they need to get in what's called a caloric deficit to lose fat and or weight, right, at the same time while they're training. And for some people that are underweight, maybe they need to actually be in a caloric surplus. So that's eating a little bit more calories than I need. That's actually the most, from a muscle building standpoint, that's kind of the best situation, because there's lots of excess calories and energy for your body to attach to the muscles. But you could, at the very least, if you have to lose weight, you want to keep training as well, because then that helps signal to your body, hey, don't take away weight from our muscles, just take away from the fat. Because if you just go on a diet and try to lose weight without training, then what could happen is your body goes, well, I need to take away weight from muscle and fat. and you don't want to lose muscle. So if you train at the same time and eat a relatively high protein, like I suggested, your body is way less likely to take that weight from muscle and prioritize instead fat. And I think most people would prefer that situation. Sleep. So try to get at least 6 hours, if not more, if able. And then stress, you know, manage your stress as best as possible. So it's maybe not the actual amount of stress that you deal with. It might be just kind of how you manage it. My flippant answer is kind of just, you know, focus on the crap that you have actual control over and just kind of let go of the crap that you don't. You know, think of like road rage. You can, you know, someone cuts you off, you can sit there and cuss and yell and be pissed off for the next hour, and you're basically just running your body into the ground. Or you can just say, wow, that person's a really bad driver, and then back off and give them 3 to 4 car lengths, you know, and just protect yourself and just kind of let it roll off you. And that's probably going to be a better way to manage that stress. And then potentially maybe training helps you manage your stress as well. These are all kind of interwoven. Meeting will end in 10 minutes. I think we're almost done with the slides too. Good. So basically kind of think of it like these things kind of create a good amount of soil for this training seed to grow in, right? Because when you're actually training, you're not actually getting stronger at that moment. You're sending the stimulus to the body to say, hey, we need to get stronger and better. And then over the next several days, that's when your body's actually doing the work to do that. So trying to do the best with your nutrition, sleep, and stress, and also managing your training appropriately is you're going to get a more optimal situation with that. So this is kind of other benefits. You know, research is showing that training can reduce risk of like neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, okay? Can help with cardiac issues. That might be because when you train, one, you are actually working your heart pretty good. You can think of lifting weights and training as like very high intensity interval training. If you've heard of like high intensity interval training, it's kind of the hot thing. But that's what lifting weights is. You're doing something that's pretty hard, and your heart has to work hard so that those muscles get the muscles and nerves that need to do the work have to get their blood. So it can actually help with the heart. It can potentially help with depression and other mental health disorders. You know, maybe you'll actually have fun with it, hopefully. There's all sorts of what we call masters leagues where, you know, people, I think it's like 35 plus all the way up into the 90s, like of just, hey, this guy's the, you know, 55-year-old bench pressing champion of the world or whatever. So you can have kind of fun with that. And then it's been shown, research upon research over many, many years has shown that anyone of any age really can increase muscle mass well into the 90s. So a lot of people are like, well, I'm old, I can't do it. But it's just not true. So how to start? Just do something that you would enjoy and do consistently. So if you walk into the gym and the dumbbells and barbells are just not your jam, I would say that's okay. And then I would go and work on, I would focus on the, maybe like the machines. So then go to the machines. That's okay. Start small and build slow. Oftentimes I'll just say, just focus on the first week or two, just showing up. You know, you show up, that's kind of the more important thing. Okay. Then, I'm going to mute you a little bit. So you show up and you focus on just getting actually doing the work, like we talked about the process goals, and just actually just doing the exercises, right? You don't even have to worry about, you know, crushing yourself or anything like that. And just start tracking what you're doing, right? And then just over time, slowly increase the weight and or reps, you know, a little bit over time, right? Again, the first couple of weeks, you might just do like 1 or 2 sets of each exercise just to get yourself used to it, just to get yourself showing up. And then, gradually add, another set each week. And eventually maybe you're doing something like 3 to 5 sets of your exercise. You're going to have a weight that is feeling good. And then maybe, each week you either try to increase that weight a little bit, or maybe you try to do another, a couple more reps. Again, stressing, just focus up and showing up, doing the work, set an appointment for yourself. Just do it. Just go. Okay. Just show up, make it your goal. Like if you're going to do a checklist, make your goal that I'm just going to get to the gym. Okay. You walk in the gym, maybe you just walk around the gym the first day. You don't even lift a single weight, just make it a thing that's like a part of your life. Okay, so thank you for your time. Let's get training. Let's go to questions. Anybody have a question? Let's see. How do we do this? Go chat. Participants. There's a chat.
Hey, Nicholas.
Oh, hello, Lynn.
Hi. So I'll just share with the group what I said in my chat, but it's not a question, but it's just a statement that over the summer I had increased my efforts on strength training and concentrating on my legs and my arms and everything. And I did yoga and plyo and did a lot of squats because in early September I had major cervical spine surgery and I was in the hospital for a week. But if I had not done that training, I think I would have been so much weaker and not able to even stand up out of bed. But I was able, because I couldn't use my upper body and neck muscles because it hurt so bad, I was able to get up out of bed or off the chair or whatever because my legs were so much stronger. So it's important to anybody, and I'm 54, so as we age, just to keep our body strong, because you never know what is going to be ahead of you and how those muscles come into the play. So just wanted to make that comment to everybody.
No, that's awesome. And that's absolutely right. And we actually kind of have a term for preparation prior to surgery. We call it prehab. So instead of rehab would be like after an injury or surgery, whereas what we call prehab would be like I'm building myself up as much as reasonably possible prior to a surgery. And, anecdotally, patients that I've seen that have done that for like, let's say before a total knee or total hip, those are the people that when I saw them in the hospital, the either day of or the day after surgery, that we were getting up and walking. And oftentimes the people who did not do that were the people that, they could barely sit up at the edge of the bed, the next day after surgery. So I think that's a great point. And it's kind of just that old saying where it's like you prepare for the worst and hope for the best, right? Hopefully you don't ever get injured or have to get a surgery or get, sick or anything like that, right? Hopefully life just goes super smooth, but we can't predict that. And ideally, we're as prepared as possible physically and mentally, because I think something maybe I didn't bring up as much here, but training also prepares you mentally, right? You're doing something that's hard, right? You're going beyond your normal daily, stress of your body, and you're purposefully doing something that's hard. And so yes, that improves you physically, but also improves you mentally. And one of my favorite things is when I work with people is like when they're doing just like a deadlift, which is literally just picking up a weight from the ground. It's called a deadlift because the weight's sitting on the ground at a dead stop and then you're lifting it up. Okay. So pretty straightforward exercise. But you get people that go, wow, I didn't know I could lift that, right? Because they've never challenged themselves and they have this kind of new confidence on their face. And I've seen this in all ages. I've done this with my older clients, in their 80s, and they're like, wow, how much weight was that? And they're like, 60 pounds. They're like, holy crap, I didn't know I could lift that. And then I've done it, with my teenager clients, right? So, you know, just the mental and physical preparedness, I think, is a huge component to that. And then, of course, if you unfortunately have to go get a surgery or something, or you get injured or get sick, you know, you're going to be far more likely to get through that with probably what we call, you know, a higher quality of life, like Lynn was saying. All right, got less than a minute before Zoom kicks me off, so